Welcome to The Wrap with me, Nicolaas Bauer. Simple news updates for busy people brought to you by explain.co.za. Lockdown level 3 loading, but hold the ciggies and booze.
It's not illegal to smoke the cigarette in your house.
Are we really ready to open our schools?
That schools will reopen on the 1st of June.
Trump becomes a true believer.
Many millions of Americans embrace worship as an essential part of life.
And subsistence farming to beat hunger. All that and more as we traverse the world of current affairs in the next couple of minutes. So, Cyril Ramaphosa is due to address the nation on Sunday evening with the expectation that he'll announce South Africa moving to level 3 lockdown in the coming days. What that means in practice is anybody's guess. There are some suggestions only parts of the country will move to level 3, while those with high areas of infection will remain on level 4, which may translate into the Western Cape as well as many metros across the country staying in the naughty corner while the rest of the country scales down. And then there's of course the bun fight over booze and smokes. The Sunday papers are suggesting there could be limited sales of alcohol in level 3, while cigarettes will remain off limits. Cooperative Governance Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma has apparently tabled medical arguments within the National Command Council, arguing that smokers are more at risk of COVID-19 and that gwais must remain forbidden. The thing is, while that may be true, smokers haven't exactly kicked the habit during lockdown. The sale of illegal cigarettes has blown up. Regular brands like Peter Stuyvesant and Camel sell for up to 200 Rand a box, while normal cheapy brands like Malingo or Aspen are being flogged for as much as 80 Rand a pack of 20. But you better watch out, because if you don't stop smoking black market chuffs, Becky Cele is coming for you.
And you failed to show us where did you get the cigarette. You failed, and when did you get the cigarette? So if you say you have bought the cigarette, here is a receipt, we've got two options there, is to get you and go and get the person who sold the cigarette to you.
Sure, checking people's cigarette till slips, arresting some 200,000 people during the lockdown, people dying allegedly at the hands of the security forces, but government really seems to have its priorities in order. Talking about priorities, the blow-up about Dr. Glenda Gray this week seems to me like the definition of a mountain out of a molehill. News 24 reported this week that the CEO of the Medical Research Council had broken ranks with government's Corona Medical Advisory Committee, intimating she was calling for an immediate end to the lockdown. It was based on her assertion that cases of hunger around the country were skyrocketing, and that the biggest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere, Chris Hani Baragwanath, was seeing cases of malnutrition for the first time in decades. Health Minister Zweli Mkhize came out hard and fast, rebutting Gray with statistics that cases of malnutrition were being reported at Barra, but in comparison to last year, they were actually down. As the old adage in journalism goes, if someone says it's raining, best look out the window to check before you report it as fact. It also turned out that Gray had been misquoted a bit, and that she had only criticized aspects of the lockdown, not its entirety. That being said, we need to recognize that there is a culture of fear against speaking out within the government, especially the health department. And the call for Gray to be investigated for making these statements is just petty and flirting with pathetic censorship. Should we be worried that one of the country's foremost scientists is not in total agreement with government's approach to the pandemic? Yes. Should we take everything she says at face value and hold her thoughts above the 50 other members of the body advising government? No. Government has made many mistakes in the past and will do so in the future. Like this, only 10 out of an estimated 2.5 million eligible jobless South Africans have received the special 350 Rand COVID monthly allowance announced by Cyril Ramaphosa last month. Yeah, as in 10, the amount of fingers you have. I didn't stutter. The South African Social Security Agency says they've struggled to find out who actually qualifies and who doesn't. But you think that after administering the African continent's most successful welfare safety net for almost 2 decades, it would be a bit easier. The COVID crisis isn't a time for excuses. They need to do better. Government will hopefully shine when they go ahead with the plan to reopen schools soon. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga announced this week that pupils in grade 7 and grade 12 will return to school on June the 1st.
The National Coronavirus Command Council and Cabinet have approved the reopening of schools as of June 1, 2020.
Under strict health and safety standards, this partial reopening will be used as a litmus test for overall school readiness to deal with COVID-19. As expected, some schools, teachers and parents are less than pleased at the prospect. What worries me more is the over 1,500 schools that have been vandalized, burnt and robbed countrywide over the lockdown period. Where was the army and police to prevent that? Having a look at the coronavirus across the globe as we recount 5.2 million cases, almost 350,000 deaths, and over 2.2 million people recovered around the planet, governments the world over are having a tough time with the disease. Donald Trump has declared churches, mosques, and synagogues essential services and demanded that they be reopened across the USA.
Churches, synagogue, and mosques as essential places that provide essential services. Some governors have deemed liquor stores and abortion clinics as essential, but have left out churches and other houses of worship. It's not right. So I'm correcting this injustice and calling houses of worship essential.
Trump threatened to override governors who refused to reopen them, a power he does not possess as US president. Many have interpreted the move as an attempt to rally Bible Belt support ahead of the US elections in November. Meanwhile, Trump of the tropics, Jair Bolsonaro, has had a bad week. The Brazilian president not only has to deal with a COVID-19 explosion after refusing a national lockdown, but Brazil's Supreme Court has released a video of him swearing to the moon and back about being unable to change legal officials investigating his own family. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it, South Africa? As always, Bolsonaro denies any wrongdoing. And you guessed it, he said he's the victim of a grand political plot. In Spain, it's Toyotas over the toy, as thousands of people are protesting against the government's handling of the coronavirus outbreak from their cars. The far-right Vox Party urged supporters to drive through major cities without leaving their vehicles in order to maintain social distancing. Protesters in the capital Madrid drove in convoy and waved Spanish flags as they called for Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to resign and take full blame for one of the worst corona fatality rates in Europe. Talking about looking for blame, Australia led the latest charge in forcing an investigation into the origins of the coronavirus this week. China obviously wasn't happy and slapped the Aussies with an 80% tariff on Australian barley imports and banned some beef exports from down under outright. China has done its best not to have the COVID-19 finger of blame pointed at it. And it would seem Hong Kong has just offered the distraction it needs. The world's second biggest economy dropped a political bombshell on Hong Kong this week when it declared it would impose a national security law on the city. The details are thin, but it's understood the law would make criminal any act of secession, subversion, terrorism, or activities with foreign forces. It remains to be seen if Hong Kong, which was handed back to China from British control in 1997, will be engulfed in a new wave of protests if the law gets to be enacted. In news to make your heart sing, as government battles to meet demand for food parcels, concerns about red tape hampering food distribution have led to the novel idea of promoting subsistence farming. As anger mounts over permission needed to distribute food parcels and stories of produce going rotten as it waits to be distributed, the Solidarity Fund has said it will look into facilitating small-scale farming and seed planting programs around the country. Let's face it, handouts will always come second to empowerment. If you can teach a community how to feed itself instead of waiting to be fed, I'm all for it. And who knows, maybe it'll spark some sort of agricultural revolution. Not so long ago, Bantu Holomisa, remember that guy? He was all about this idea. Well, kind of.
You give a poor man a fish and you feed him for a day. You teach him to fish. You give him
And finally, an alligator who survived World War II has finally died at a Moscow zoo. Mississippi alligator Saturn was gifted to Berlin Zoo in 1936, soon after he was born in the USA, and escaped the zoo as it was bombed in 1943. British soldiers found him in 1946 and handed him over to the Soviet Union, where he was a hit with visitors to the Moscow Zoo ever since.
Gib du jetzt deine Stimme ab. Wenn ja, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
Well, we'll never know now what he was up to in those 3 years he was missing. That's it from The Wrap, brought to you by explain.co.za. Don't forget to show the love online and subscribe. Big ups to Arti, Romy and Varashni for helping me put this together. From myself, Nicholas Bauer, hambane kahle.